بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. باحجي جواد رئيس المجلس العام للتنمية الفلاحية. فاليوم بمناسبة الدورة 17 للملتقى الدولي للفلاحة يتم تنظيم ندوة علمية حول الزراعة الحراجية. هذه الندوة اللي الهدف ديالها هو تسليط الضوء على مجموعة من التجارب لا على المستوى الافريقي لا على المستوى الاوروبي وكذلك على المستوى الاسيوي، لان كانوا مجموعة الخبراء اللي حضروا واللي الهدف هو نشاركوا التجربة المغربية في إطار المبادرات الفلاحة الأفريقية من أجل التكيف مع التغيرات المناخية تكيف، واللي كذلك الهدف ديالها هو أنه نشاركوا الشركاء على المستوى الإفريقي، خاصة بالنجاح اللي كتعرفوا القطاع الفلاحي والفلاحة المغربية في مجموعة ديال سلاسل ديال الإنتاج ومجموعة ديال المناهج التقنية باش إن شاء الله يعني تستدم الفلاحة على المستوى الوطني، وكذلك لما لا أن على المستوى الإفريقي ياخذوا التجربة المغربية وكذلك حتى حنا نستافدوا من التجربة ديال الشركاء على المستوى الإفريقي. فالحمد لله كيف شفتوا كانوا مجموعة من الخبراء اللي كانوا مجموعة ديال العروض القيمة واللي قدموها خبراء على المستوى العالمي، وهاد الاقتراحات وكذلك التوصيات ديال هذا اللقاء ديال اليوم هذه تم التقديم ديالو غدا في لقاء مباشر وفي ندوة اللي غادي ترأسها السيد الوزير، واللي هذه كل الهدف ديالها انها نشاركوها مع الخبراء الأفارقة وكذلك مع الدول الافريقيه اللي كتربطنا معهم مجموعه من الشراكات. فهذا لقاء مهم على المستوى ديال الندوات اللي كيعرفها الملتقى الدولي، وهذه تكون ان شاء الله مجموعه من الندوات الاخرى في مجموعه من الاشكاليات ومجموعه من الامور اللي الحمد لله حنا نجحنا فيها يعني على المستوى الوطني، واللي غادي نشاركوا الاخوه الافارقه في التجارب هذو باش ان شاء الله تبقى التجربه المغربيه تجربه رائده تحت القياده ديال صاحب الجلاله الملك محمد السادس نصره الله.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the presenters and the presentations. Well, actually, I just want to maybe it's more a reminder actually than something else. The Great Generation has a very ambitious agroforestry program. I mean, you name it the way you want, but if we look at the tree planting, which is there, it's actually agroforestry. Now, the issue is that the program has, needs to be resolved, and there are many I would say challenges and issues basically that should be addressed. But that's a very ambitious and innovative agroforestry program. I would like to add, and I would like to thank you, Mr. Jacobson, if you are still with us, about adding shrubs to the program. And that's a very smart idea, because agroforestry just with trees is not complementary. And I would like to add to the concept that you presented about complementarity. So trees and shrubs, that's the best way to conceive of, and talking about conceptions, an agroforestry program. So again, the Great Generation has very ambitious agroforestry program. It has issues, it has constraints like any development program that should be addressed. Thank you very much. For agricultural development to contribute to this great initiative during this great event, which is the International Fair for Agriculture in Bemknaas. And before I start, I would like to introduce very briefly what the General Council is. Actually, it's a think tank, it's an institutional structure within the Ministry of Agriculture, whose main role actually is to assess, evaluate relevant issues across the agricultural value chain, advise His Excellency the Minister on contextual constraints and issues, food pricing, professional organizations, as well as contribute to any institutional and policy reform within the ministry, but also in collaboration with professional partners, professional associations and agricultural chambers. And I'm very honored actually to take over my professor and my teacher, Mr. who is present with us. And I would like to congratulate him and thank him for all the great job he has been doing at the General Council. So the main topics actually that that I would like to discuss very briefly. I'm not going to be long. I know everybody is tired actually, and everyone would like to go home. So I will be very brief and concise. Agricultural forestry is a key issue actually, is a very important issue where in a context where forestry issues, landscapes play a critical role in regulating water cycle, integrating the impacts of climate change and contributing to energy and food security and contributing to labor and income generation activities across African countries, since we are talking about African countries. And the issues actually that are addressed in this panel: policy, governance, mechanism, investment strategies, institutional collaboration, and expansion. And during all the presentations that has been presented, I think all these issues have been addressed. I'm not going to get into that, but I will just focus briefly on those issues, policies. All countries have policies, and I think the key objectives of the Green Morocco Generation Activity strategy has been addressed by Professor Bakoui. And he mentioned some of the two big programs on agroforestry. The first one is no-till farming, and the second one is tree planting. Again, I will insist and persist actually that's an agroforestry program. There are issues, and I would like to thank Professor Michael Jacobson, who mentioned one complementary activity actually that should be added to the system, a system which existed actually. Our grandfathers used to plant trees and also plant other shrubs inside the orchard. So that's something that existed for a long decades. But we need to strengthen that. We need to fix it, to make sure that it's implemented in the appropriate place, in the right place, with the right ingredients and with the key partners. So policy, governance mechanisms. I think there are too many actors. As we say, there are too many cooks in the kitchen, and when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, you have to be very careful about the final products. You have governments, you have institutional partners, you have inhabitants and the population, you have private sector, you have civil society, so you have all those key partners. And actually, when we talk about policy, we need to make sure that everyone is not just involved during the conception of the strategy, but also is involved and has an interest during the whole cycle of implementation of the programs. Institutional collaborations, again, I mean, it's more or less the same thing. When we are talking about institutional collaboration, we need to make sure that it's not just done at the beginning of the implementation of any program, at the conception of any program, but it's done before, during, and after. And when we assess, we need to make sure that everyone is involved in those programs and in those activities. Expansion, well, expansion actually is a very scary word. When we talk about expansion, we need to make sure that we do it the right way it should be done. Sometimes it's not done correctly. It's done simply because it's done because we need to do something. But it should be done with all the ingredients, and we know that agroforestry expansion has many benefits, and impact for smallholders, for example, farmers in low and middle income communities and countries in Africa. And actually this topic is wide ranging and well documented. I mean, the benefits are many, carbon sequestration, income generation, population, political objectives, population fixing, and so on and so forth. So globally, I mean, there are huge potentials, but also there are barriers, as some of the colleagues have already mentioned at the beginning, to scale EF agroforestry among farmers, among local population, on remarkable, and those issues actually, something I would like to mention is that during all the presentation, more or less we are talking about the same generic issue. Context differ, but always we are talking about the same issues, and commonly cited issues is unclear and undefined and deficient sometimes land tenure issues, or resource use rights, policy and regulation implementation, lack of knowledge and capacity, and that's something very important. When we conceive of a program, one of the trainings I had actually at the first years of my professional experience at UCID during the 80s was as a project officer, is when you conceive of a program, the first question you should ask yourself is 10, 15, 5 years after the implementation of the program, you come back, what do you leave behind? And that's something that we have to think about to ensure what we call nowadays sustainability. Also, there is lack of knowledge, as I said. In one of the presentations, one of the colleagues mentioned the farmer field schools. Actually, it's a tool for agricultural extension which has been implemented, and sometimes it's those tools that we need. We have them, but we need to be more aggressive and making sure that those tools actually are present and they are at the disposal actually of farmers, because farmers, everyone knows farmers, and farmers, you have to keep up with them until they believe on their projects and they continue by themselves. It's a very, very tough task actually, depending on the project, depending on investment, depending on the duration of the program. But that's basically one of the key issues. So again, appropriate policies remain the key lever to any agroforestry strategy implementation. Incentives are very important, but they are not the very important aspect. Sometimes the incentives become a constraint. So you have to make sure that you have the right tools, you have incentives, you have the right partners and the right stakeholders. Extension services should be present for both, and that's something that we need to make sure that we have in African countries. We have in a more aggressive way. I mean, we have that. I mean, someone will say, look, we have extension services. Yes, we do, but we need to make sure that those extension services are there in quality, not in numbers. And farmers, they imitate one another. If a neighbor succeed on one in his project, I mean, make sure that his neighbor will do the same thing. They are like kids. They look at each other, and that's basically the approach that we need to adopt. We cannot work with all farmers, but we need to make sure that we present the right example and take the lessons learned to be disseminated in other communities. So, in a nutshell, it's a trade-off. Again, I will go back to the presentation of Michael Jacobson, yes, which was actually an excellent presentation. It's a trade-off with the different ingredients that we have. So we have policies, sound policies, partners, stakeholders, we have the landscape, we have political and social approaches. This is actually sometimes that's something that we did. I mean, we tested, we tried politically based or socially based approaches, and those were tested, and that has given what it has given, you know. Or we need to look for a holistic vision and policy, and I will go back to one of the terms actually he used, is complementarity, and the 4 I's. The first key term, and that's very important, is intentional. It should be intentional. And you should believe on the policy you are putting in place. And there should be faith from the other side, from farmers. They should believe in their project. That's very important, that's key. That's 90% for the success of any project. It should be intensive, it should be integrated, or key parties should be involved, and finally, it should be interactive. I mean, we should exchange among each other the lessons learned and the success stories. With that, I will stop there. Thank you very much.